Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the verb to call. Now, more specifically, we're going to talk about the phrasal verb to call. But first, let's understand the verb to call. So, according to Google, to call is to speak in a loud, distinct voice so as to be heard. Now, what Google is referring to is, Sarah, come over here. That's calling. But most people nowadays use it to refer to calling through your phone. When you talk to someone through your phone, that is also calling. Call is much more complicated than just to call, especially if you throw in some prepositions. So here is a list of prepositions and the correlating timestamps, so you can skip to them because there's a lot of them. So let's get to it. Alright, so if you're new to the channel, how I'm going to do this is I'm going to explain the phrasal verb with every single preposition that makes it a phrasal verb. But I'm going to go from what I subjectively think as easiest to hardest. In other words, the first ones will be very simple and straight to the definition. However, the later ones will be more up to how you want to use it, and it's less flexible in how you use it. So just keep an eye out for that. All right. So the first one is back. So to call back. The definition of to call back is to call again. So if you call somebody once, that means, and you called them back, that means you called them a second time. You did it again. So an example, after not responding, I called my friend back several times. So my friend didn't respond the first time, so I called again, I called back. Call back can also mean to be asked to return somewhere. For example, the actors were called back to audition. So they were at this place auditioning and they were called back, which means they want to be returned. They're asked to be returned. Now, call off. Call off can mean to cancel something. For example, I have to call off the meeting. Nobody's planning on coming. So call off, simple, you can replace it with cancel. I call off something, or I call something off, either way. Another example, the performance was called off due to bad weather. So whatever performance it may be, probably outside, it was canceled due to the bad weather. Call up. Now to call up means to be asked to come to your position. Pretty simple. Now, for example, he was called up by the teacher for talking too much. So the teacher noticed he was talking a lot, so he was called up to the teacher. Another example, we were called up to the principal's office for detention. So we were asked to come to the principal's office. To call around. To call around means to call in all directions. It's pretty simple. It's kind of what it means. Around means this. This means around. So if you call around, it means you're calling in all directions. This is usually to get somebody's attention. For example, Michael called around to see if he could find his dog. Now, call in. Call in can mean to let somebody know about something. So usually you use this in more formal contexts, or if you're going to a meeting, if you're going to somewhere that is like your work, your job, your school. For example, I called in late to work. I called in late to work is a very common phrase that English speakers use. I called in late to work, which means that I called and said, I let them know that I'm going to come late, or I was going to come late. Another example, customers have been calling in saying that the service is very poor. So that means that the customers want to let somebody know that the service at said place is very poor. Call on. Call on means to be asked to answer something. So if you are being called on, that means that you are expected to answer. For example, the teacher calls on Jimmy all the time because he always knows the answer. So if you're Jimmy and you're always being called on, that means you are expected to answer because you know the answer. Another example, we had never been called on until today. So this is something that may happen in class. Your teacher may not have called on you until today, maybe because today is the first day you know that answer. Now, call out. So to call out means to choose somebody because of something. You have a reason that you are calling this person out. For example, I'm trying my best. Stop calling me out. So here, you are doing something. Someone may be criticizing you though. So they are calling you out. They are choosing you because of something you're doing. It can have a negative connotation, so it depends how you use it. Stop calling me out is very common. Means stop teasing me. Stop criticizing me. Another example, I must call them out when they do the wrong thing. So I must call them out when they do the wrong thing, which means I must choose them, I must criticize them when they do the wrong thing, which is pretty logical. Call for. Now, call for is a little more difficult. It's not used so much. It's mainly used with expressions and kind of formal-ish talk, however you would like to consider it. So it means to insinuate something, to hint at something, or to need. You could see it as to need, to call for this. If this calls for this, then this needs this. For example, all this hunger calls for food. So that's kind of a little expression that you could use. All this hunger calls for food, which means you're hungry, I'm hungry, he's hungry, she's hungry, we're all hungry. There's hunger in the area, so it's calling for food. It's more poetic. That's why I'd consider it the hardest one. So this is hinting at this. Alright, now you should have a good idea about all the prepositions, and if you don't worry. Practice makes permanent. So just keep reviewing them. Here are some exercises that may help. So pause the video and try to solve them on your own. Now, let's go through the first one together. Let's go through all of them together. Why are you me? Which preposition could be used here? Why are you me? So it sounds like someone is doing something to another person. So you could use, why are you calling on me? Why are you expecting an answer? Why do you want an answer from me? That's what calling on means. Why are you calling on me? Why do you want me to say something? Let's go through number 2. They said they were calling, but I couldn't hear them. Now, they said they were calling, but I couldn't hear them. So, calling, but I couldn't hear them. So they must have been calling around. They must have been wanting me. So they said they were calling around, but I couldn't hear them. That's something, it's typical. If somebody's calling around for you, they want you. But in this case, I could not be heard. Number 3. Bob said that he'd call to notify us that he wasn't coming. Now, this sentence could well go without any preposition. It actually works by itself. Bob said that he'd call to notify us that he wasn't coming. However, this sounds like a work sort of context, or maybe like a meeting. So you would say in. it sounds better. Bob said that he'd call in to notify us that he wasn't coming. Bob said that he'd call in to notify us he wasn't coming, which just further means that he wanted to let us know something. Last one, the fourth one. This disobedience calls some discipline. So, this disobedience calls for some discipline. This is because where there's disobedience, there needs to be discipline. This is not an expression. This disobedience calls for some discipline. It's not a common expression. It's just for the example. You could say this with anything. There's disobedience somewhere. Where there's disobedience, you probably need discipline. So this disobedience calls for some discipline. That might sound condescending, but so it is. Alright, you've made it to the end of the video, but we're not done yet. I'm going to give you some bonus expressions that if you want to spice up your vocabulary further, you can use these, or at least just know what they are. Knowing things always helps, just being exposed. So, to call it a day. To call it a day means that something is done. It's simply done. Call it a day, we're finished. So, for example, we've done so much. Let's call it a day. We've done so much. Work, anything. We're done. Let's call it a day. To be a close call. To be a close call means something almost happened. That could be anything. It depends on the context. Just if something almost happened, it's usually bad. If something almost happened, that was a close call. For example, my dad almost got hit by a foul ball at a baseball game. That was a close call. That was very close, that was very dangerous, but nothing happened. In the end, nothing happened. To be uncalled for. To be uncalled for means to be unexpected. It simply means to be unexpected. For example, Charlie won the race. That was uncalled for. That was uncalled for. Very useful expression. It just means I didn't expect that. Nobody really expected that. Last expression, to call the shots. This is my personal favorite. It means to be in charge. It means to make the decisions. It means to make the decisions, simply put. For example, I would have liked to eat at my favorite restaurant, but Laura's calling the shots of where to eat. That means I don't have a decision of where to go. I don't have a decision of where we're eating. Laura does. She's calling the shots. She's in charge. That's how it is sometimes. So you've made it to the end of the video, actually. So, before you go, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you want further explanations, I can explain it to you. I'll respond to you about any of the prepositions. This phrasal verb was pretty extensive. If you want, you can also suggest other verbs for me to do, other phrasal verbs in specific, because I know it can be difficult. Definitely, there's so much to remember, but remember, keep practicing. So stay tuned. I will post more videos about different phrasal verbs and explaining them in its fullest extent as I possibly can. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.